Hello, everyone. Rob Paneer here. It's hockey time, and that means that there is a lot to do for Field Pass. Plus, I run a ministry, and I'm currently working on my doctorate. I have a lot to do already, but wouldn't you know, my wife would like more than 5 minutes of my time each day. I need to ensure that I am at my absolute best, and this is where Pure Energy has been a godsend. Pure is made of all natural products and helps to boost my energy while also helping me to think more clearly. I am getting more done than ever before, and there is no big letdown with Pure. I get 6 to 8 hours of great energy and clear thinking at a cost that is far less than you pay for store-bought energy drinks. Plus, Pure is actually good for your health. If you're looking to energize your day and get more done, then you need a dose of the Pure Performance. To find out more, go to thepureperformance.com and fill out the request form. That's thepureperformance.com. Someone will get in touch with you right away, helping you to get on the Pure Performance pathway to success.
3 topics, 60 minutes covering the biggest news in the ECHL. This is the 3 Periods Podcast. Now, here are your hosts, Matthew Will and Matthew Harding.
And just like that, we're back at it. We want to be one of the last to wish you a happy Thanksgiving and now a happy holidays as we start to move into the end of year holidays. Another couple of exciting week of ECHL hockey. We get to talk about the all-important question of, is the Kelly Cup playoff field set, and more coming at you next on the 3 Periods Podcast. I'm Matthew Will, joined by Matthew Harding. How you doing tonight, bud?
You know, sometimes when it's been a day, so I started talking to you and then realized my microphone was all the way down. But no, I'm doing all right. Did you have a good Thanksgiving? I saw you were back here. You and I weren't able to link up and cover a game, but that's all right. Did you have a good Thanksgiving?
Absolutely. Got to spend a whole night with my nephew and time with both my family, my girlfriend's family. It was nice. Real nice to get away from the school for a couple of days. So glad to be able to have that opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. And you are coming to us from the middle of Illinois, from the capital of Illinois, the sprawling metropolis of Springfield, Illinois tonight. What are you doing there?
Yeah. Southern Indiana has a game here tomorrow night. Both the women and men play. And me and my broadcast partner, Ian, we drove down this afternoon so we can attend practice and film sessions tomorrow ahead of the game and call a couple basketball games. So we're excited to get into the conference season, I guess.
Yeah, and then you told me before we hit record on this that you'll call those games on Thursday night, and then you'll drive back after the game, and you thought it would be sometime between 3 and 3:30 Friday morning before you were able to get home. So in a way, you are living the life of a minor league hockey player, announcer, staff member, with getting into the next city in the early morning hours. And as Rick Moranis would say, in the wee small ones of a Friday morning.
Yeah, Dwight Schrute once said that imitation is the most sincere form of flattery. So
anytime you can quote Dwight Schrute,
I look for the opportunity anytime.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You and I are huge Office fans. I did not get to do any of that over the holiday. It was jam-packed with hockey, and we were able to go out of town to Kansas City and see my brother and sister-in-law. It was good to see them and get everybody around the table again for the first time since, November 2019, I think, before everything went sideways. And good to get everybody around the table again. And we hope that everybody had a chance to do that here over the Thanksgiving holiday and sets ourselves up for the end of the year. I said this on the Thunder pregame show when we recorded it Wednesday night. It's hard to believe that it is the 12th month of 2021. When 2020 went by so slow, here's 2021 just steamrolling through it.
Maybe it helped that we had hockey into July.
Quite possibly.
But I'm right there with you. It felt like it just zoomed by.
Yeah. Like it felt like we blinked our eyes 3 times. We were back at the hockey rink. And you're right. The hockey season for you and I went until June, but overall went till July. And here we are, just past Thanksgiving. And now headlong into a string of holidays. Hanukkah is underway, and now we have Christmas in 3 weeks, and then we'll be turning the calendar here before too long.
Absolutely. Not a ton happening major news-wise, at least, in the ECHL the past couple of weeks. But things are definitely starting to take a little bit of better shape. I think you and I could agree on that one. We're starting to see some teams rise up to where we kind of expected them to be. And a little more interestingly, there's a couple of teams who are hanging in the fold who originally we didn't think had any business being there. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about this level of hockey is anyone can pop out at the beginning of the season and have a little run. And if you can have a successful into November, early December, you're in a really good place to carry some success through. And there's a couple of teams you and I will mention tonight that are really set up to have a successful December and almost cement their playoff spots. You've said it the past couple of weeks, and it'll be something I think we continue to say, is that those playoff spots are not won in November and December, but they are certainly lost.
Yeah.
And I think we're starting to see a couple of them start to lose a grip on them, certainly.
Yeah, it's starting to feel like for a couple of these teams that they're getting into a hole that may be rather untenable for them to get out of it. We'll see what happens. Like they're going to need to go on a really long run here to get on and have some teams lose ahead of them to get back into the playoff conversation. Luckily, I think the league is in a really good spot, competitive balance-wise, with parity. You and I look at the ECHL standings all the time, and entering the weekend's action, there's only one team right now near 30 points, and that's Newfoundland. Everybody else, I think, is in that 10 to 18 point range. Fort Wayne and Toledo are the outliers in the Western Conference, along with Utah and Idaho being north of 20 points. But I think everybody there is sitting in between that 10 and 24 point range there. So if you are ECHL Commissioner Ryan Creelan, you have to love where the league is at, competitive balance-wise. Like everybody has a chance every single night. You're not going to get a total layover like you would in some other league years. But yeah, it's going to make for fascinating playoff races here as we head down the stretch and into the month of March, and especially April, when you get those teams really fighting for those playoff spots. It is interesting to note that before, and we'll get into these in a little bit, but the NHL is in a similar situation that almost 80% of those teams who are in a playoff position on Thanksgiving Day make the playoffs. That to me is really interesting. It shows that the good teams are good and they stay good all year. And you may have one or two teams catch fire and come in and knock somebody out. But on the whole, good teams in these leagues stay good the whole year. And
boy, is it refreshing to know we get 7-game series when we get to the playoffs.
You kidding me?
I understand 100% why we had to do the 5-game series. It helped get the playoffs over with so we could have an off season. But man, did we miss some really exciting potential 6 or 7 game series.
Oh yeah, for sure. I'm one of those. No matter what you do with the playoff format, no matter what you do with the regular season, you could cut it down 68, 76, 72, 64. It doesn't matter. Just keep the playoff format the same. 4 rounds, top 8 in each conference, best of 7. Let's roll it out and go. First 2 rounds in the division, I think, are fine, but because that creates intrigue and that builds rivalries and things like that. But man, just don't touch it, please. Whatever you do, do not touch it.
The idea of 16 wins to a cup is perfect.
Yes.
Well, one of the things that we didn't see as much of last year, and we're already starting to see this year, is some of the league's top scorers are getting called up by their AHL affiliates. This could be maybe due to the fact that there's not those taxi squads that we're pulling players away. But you noted in some of our notes that 3 of the top 4 scorers in the ECHL are currently up in the AHL. Is this a trend you think we continue to see with the top scorers starting to get pulled away?
I think so. It's you look at who the scorers are, like Patrick Watling from Wheeling with 24 points in 14 games, Matt Berry 24 points in 15 games, and Aaron Luchik 22 points in 16 games for the Orlando Solar Bears. Those are really good players who've put together phenomenal numbers this year. Why not give them a look in the American Hockey League? Put them on a third or fourth line, maybe float them up to a second line, and see what happens. At least if you're the American Hockey League team, you know that if you need them later in the season, they're there for you and you can go back to them. The one that I think is surprising to me the most is Aaron Luchik, that through all of his success at the ECHL level, and he played and won a cup in Newfoundland in their first year and racked up significant points there, pushed last year to a runner-up for MVP, had led the league in points with 74, and was off to another blazing start this year. It was surprising to me that he didn't get a look sooner. And that you have to wait until December 1st to get him a call-up to the American Hockey League. So, I mean, that one's the most surprising of all. Matt Berry has had time in the American Hockey League, so of the 3, that's probably the least surprising. Him and Patrick Watling would be Aaron Luchik for me would be the one that is most surprising. Good for Patrick Watling to get back up to the American Hockey League again. He's been a guy who's toiled here in the ECHL for a long time, a number of years, and it's good to see that he's having some success in Wheeling, really putting that team on his back and leading them this year in every phase of the game.
And Aaron Luchik up in Syracuse, a team that's only won 6 of their 17 games. I think that provides a really unique opportunity for him to get some quality minutes and prove himself at the next level. So he's definitely one that I'm keeping an eye on. And in the next couple of weeks, we hope to see him continue that success and earn yourself a full-time job. It's unfortunate to see a player of that caliber have to leave the league, but this is why the league exists and what we want from the league. So
right.
It's going to be interesting to see how the next couple of weeks go for a Syracuse team who's currently kind of struggling in a packed division, really. Mm-hmm. And the next couple of weeks might be a little bit telling there. So,
yeah, I would agree. And Tampa Bay and Syracuse have a really good relationship with Orlando. So, that if Syracuse were to go on a run and Orlando somehow falls out of playoff contention, that he could potentially be a black ace for the Syracuse team in the playoffs. Somebody who you bring in lieu of a player who's struggling or is hurt. So good for him. Good for Syracuse to take a look at him now. Granted, they are dealing with some injuries. So, I mean, this could be all 3 of these players could be a significant blessing. And to your point about what we want to see from the ECHL, yes, you do want to see these players develop and you want them to move on. But honestly, there's some intrigue here. It's been a long time since we've had a player score over 100 points. Do we think that 1, 2, 3 could get north of 75 or 80 points this year and come close to 100? Like, these players were on some ridiculous paces when they left. TJ Hinsick, 25 points in 15 games. Patrick Watling, 24 and 14. Matt Berry, 24-14. Aaron Luchik, 22 and 16. Zach O'Brien, you and I saw him play here in Wichita, 22 and 16. So, I mean, these are some players on ridiculous point benders, if you will. The intrigue is there for me to see how close they can get to 50 or 55 by the All-Star game, and then maybe potentially after if they even darken the shadow of 100.
Oh, yeah. Well, while we're kind of talking about the AHL, what a awful week it's been for him up there.
Yeah.
Hershey and Hartford both with positive cases. Bridgeport and Providence shut down. We're starting to see COVID go through that league. they're not going to be the only league that has this happen to them. I promise you that.
Yeah.
But it starts to raise the question now that we're seeing the Omicron variant start to spread and be a little bit different. Does it worry you at all now that we're entering a season where things were starting to feel a little bit more normal, and now, kind of get that reality check that we're still in this pandemic world?
From what we understand, from Mark Diver, who reports on the Providence Bruins very well, has been a longtime reporter for that hockey club up there and does a really good job in Providence. From what we understand, the cases that the Bruins have are fairly mild. So that leads me to believe that some or all of them were vaccinated when the season started. And Bakersfield canceled or postponed their game due to COVID protocols the other night. Ryan Holt, who you and I are very familiar with, came right out and said, hey, for what it's worth, everybody from the top down in this organization is vaccinated. So it's good to know that the vaccine is making its way around minor league hockey. Do I think that there will be interruptions in the ECHL? Yes. It's not a matter of if, but when. And with the new variant around Omicron now on Wednesday was found in the United States, I think that raises the specter that is going to be more likely. Now we're dealing with two variants, Omicron, and we're still dealing with Delta. So I think that this is all. I think that all of this was built into these league schedules when they made them and rolled them out over the summer. I think if you and I were to sit down and interview Ryan Creelan, when I hope we have the chance to do it in Jacksonville, I think that he would have his head in the beach if he told you that he was, he thought he'd get through a 72-game season times 27 teams with no cancellations or postponements. There have been significant impacts to these teams already. I know you and I know Bruce Ramsey in Wichita didn't coach games, not because of COVID. He had a really bad case of the flu. Steve Martinson has missed games. The Allen Americans have missed games, and I know players around the league have as well. So, I think it's just a matter of time. These players are in petri dishes, traveling up and down the road. It's going to be hard to get away from it. So yeah, just a matter of time, but good. Just want to extend some well wishes to everybody who is dealing with this. And it is a stark reminder that it's for all that we hope that this COVID pandemic is over, and for everybody wanting it so bad to go back to where we were at in 19 or even in February of 2020. We can't. We still have to do what we need to do to get to that point where we are able to go maskless and unafraid to go into a large venue without a mask. And I think that might be something that we deal with for a long time. But so I think we just still need to do what we need to do to get there, but realize that this is just a part of our world now.
Yeah, and I think it's important for just to remind people, the you and I are here to obviously talk about the implications it has on the league and where teams are at in the standings and which players are playing well and not playing well. But at the end of the day, our hopes lie with the fact that we get through a season and everyone stays healthy.
Yeah,
I would rather play half a season and have players safe than pushing for 70, 80 games when we just don't need to put players at risk.
Right. Yeah. And the good news for the American Hockey League is that they are doing points percentage based playoffs this year. I don't know how the ECHL is doing their playoffs. I know we're going back to 7-game series, and I would expect it's based on points, but what happens if there's an imbalance in games and, a team has 2 fewer games than the teams in front of them, and they're in contention for a playoff spot and the season's over. What happens there. So a lot to figure out with that. And hopefully we'll get some guidance on that from the league here relatively soon. But yeah, you just hope that everybody makes it through as healthy as possible. Like, we know the stomach flu's coming, we know the regular flu's coming, and we know COVID's already here. Just one more obstacle for these teams to have to go through. And, the medical side of this is really going to test every team's mettle all year. We've seen it with Wichita already, and how they've bounced back from that. You just hope, like I said, you just hope that everybody gets out of the season as healthy as possible.
Absolutely. And that kind of brings us into the second period, which is to look at where we're at in the standings now. Historically, it's said that the teams that are in playoff spots, like you mentioned at Thanksgiving, are the teams that generally are going to go on to be in the playoffs later in the season. In the NHL, over the period from 2013 to 2018, 62 of 80 teams in the playoffs at Thanksgiving wound up in a playoff spot. That's a 77.5% mark. In the ECHL, in 2 years, being 2017, 2018, and 2018, 2019, 25 of the 32 teams in playoff spots at Thanksgiving ended up making the playoffs. That's a 78.1% mark. It's not just kind of something we do to use as content every year. It's the fact that year in and year out, it's the same. We're always seeing the teams that have got it figured out by Thanksgiving are generally the teams who keep it figured out all the way until April.
Yeah, and I kind of want to piggyback off of your stat from the last 2 years, and go with the one that you and I did last year on whether the playoff format or whether the playoff field was set in February. We looked at February 10th or 11th as that Thanksgiving Day, if you will, in the ECHL. And of the 8 teams who qualified for the playoffs last year, 7 of them were in a playoff spot at that February 11th date, and they made the playoffs. The only one who didn't was Fort Wayne, who had not started their season yet. And they, I guess, if you want to, you could say that they beat out Tulsa for that final playoff spot. But in reality, Fort Wayne went in there and had a 660 points percentage. And I don't think that there's any catching them by the Tulsa Oilers. So, so a lot of these teams, it goes back to the original point. If you are good early and often in the season, you'll stay good for the entire year. So, it's not a surprise that we see such high numbers of teams at Thanksgiving and playoff spots, in the season and playoff spots when it comes time for April.
Well, the one we're going to look at is as if today was Thanksgiving, and we're looking at this on Wednesday afternoon, December 1st. So in the north, we've got Newfoundland, Reading, Maine, and Trois-Rivières. I think we're going to go through this just each division individually. So we'll start with the north: Newfoundland, Reading, Maine, Trois-Rivières. What do you see in the North Division, and do you think we know the 4 teams already?
I thought we knew the 4 teams. So I do think you know 2 of the 4. I think you can go ahead and Seth Davis Sharpie Newfoundland and Reading into the playoffs. I think that those 2 teams are the class of the division. I think that the dogfight there for the last 2 spots is between Adirondack, TR, and Maine. I just don't know if Worcester has quite the pieces there to put a push in and get into that playoff spot. They're only 3 points out as we record this on Wednesday night. So, but for me, I feel like Trois-Rivières will get there, and I feel like that they will be the 4th playoff team from the North, simply because, through the first month plus of the season, this offense has sputtered. But it looks like it has started to catch fire here of late. 6 players with over 10 points, and they're getting good goaltending, and they're getting solid defense as well. It's just a matter of taking all of this talent that you have offensively and putting it together. And I feel like that it's just a matter of if not when, or when not if, it comes together for TR. So I think that they will make the playoffs, and I think you'll see Maine make the playoffs there from the North for the first time in their franchise's history.
Yeah, those are the same four for me. And I mean, what more can we say about the Newfies? I mean,
Right.
They're proving that night in and night out they can perform at a high level. Not only are they going to go on and win the Brabham, but they're going to make it very hard for anyone else to touch the Kelly Cup this year.
Yeah, they come into play on Wednesday night with a league record 9 straight wins on the road to open the season. So this is a team that has been battle tested start to finish, given everything that they've been through with the whole saga with the Mary Brown Center and having to go down and play at the CBS Arena down there on the south coast of Newfoundland, and Dean McDonald wanting to build his own arena now. Given through all of that drama, inside, that team has bonded together, and to go out and win 9 straight on the road through Wednesday night's play says a lot about this toughness in this Newfoundland Growlers team. They're going to be a really, really tough out period in this playoff coming up here in April.
Well, the team that I think has the best chance, at least in the North Division, is Reading. And Reading has started to put their pieces together so far. And they've got a really good opportunity to bolster where they're at in the standings. From December 17th to January 17th, they play 11 games against Worcester.
Wow.
Not only is that a chance for Reading to, depending on where Worcester really is at, it gives Reading the chance that they can really prove that they're an elite team and can win the games against the teams they're supposed to beat. And it also gives Worcester the chance to surprise some folks. Right. If Worcester has it in them to compete towards the top 4 of this division, those 11 games are a great benchmark to see where you're at.
Yes, and those two teams have not played this year, which was a bit of a surprise for me, but they're going to fit all 11. They're going to fit a lot of those season series matchups in the span of 30 days there. So they're going to see a whole lot of each other. And you're right, this is going to be a solid opportunity for Worcester as well to kind of climb back up and get into the mix here in the North Division. I just think Reading's a better team right now. You look at their, they're giving up more goals than they score. But I think that's because Pat Nagel has been up in the American Hockey League, and the other contracted goalies that they've had haven't been as good as Pat Nagel. So they'll get this right. I think Reading will be there in the end, and it'll definitely help that they play a Worcester team who has not scored, who has the same goal differential than the Reading Royals right now, but just seem to be sputtering a lot. 4-5-0-1 in their last 10.
Now to the division that you can go ahead and scratch your head about. The South Division, where Florida has revamped where they started their season and now sit in first. Orlando behind them, Jacksonville and Norfolk round out the top 4 and current playoff teams. And then it's Atlanta before you reach South Carolina and Greenville. I think you and I are close to agreement, if not agreeing on who we think the 4 teams are. What do you think of this South Division at this point?
I don't know. That's the thing. Like, I think South Carolina is going to be there in the end. With all of the COVID issues that are happening in Hershey right now, and with as banged up as Washington has been up in the National Hockey League, you have to figure that at some point it's going to all balance out. Yeah. And eventually it will, and South Carolina will have those players come back down and they'll make a run. They always do every single year. And we put dirt on the grave last year where we thought that South Carolina was done. They weren't making the playoffs. No way, no how. And then they go on this ridiculous run. So once bitten, twice shy on the South Carolina Stingrays. They'll be there in the end. The other one I think that's a little bit of a head scratcher is Greenville, who's been out to a 6-7 start on the year. Their offense is sputtering a little bit, just over 3 goals a game. They're allowing just about the same through 13 games played, 2-4 on the road. And this was a really strong road team last year. So I know that they shook up the core a little bit and had some defections and players move on last year from last year's team. I think it's all about Andrew Lord finding the right pieces there and making it work in Greenville. And it may be more of another series of fits and starts here in the next 10 to 15 games before you see Greenville really get it in gear. They just have to keep tabs on number 3 and number 4, Jacksonville and Norfolk. The thing about Jacksonville is this: they don't score a whole lot of goals, and they don't give up a whole lot either. But for me, you need to have depth and you need to have scoring to be a playoff team. I don't think right now, I think that you and I have talked about this a lot with Wichita when we were talking over the summer. Like, there's not a lot of scoring. Where's this going to come from? When the goaltending is the house of cards and the goaltending goes awry, then the whole house of cards comes down, right? So, I mean, that makes sense. So I think that it's a race to get the scoring before the goaltending goes away. And, and Charles Williams has done a really good job there in Jacksonville. It's just going to take a little bit of time, I think, I don't know how much more he can do to keep the Jacksonville Icemen in games. Norfolk is the same way. They give up a whole bunch of goals, 51 so far. They score them in bunches too. You just have to play tighter defense if you're Norfolk, and I think that they could be a playoff team. Ultimately, though, I look at that South Division and I think why, we're going to go back to the original 4 teams that we started our season predictions with of Greenville, Orlando, South Carolina, and Florida, not in a necessary order of being those teams who are going to make the playoffs. I think you and I are in agreement on that. Yeah. So I'm just kind of interested to hear what you think about the South Division too, because I went and looked at this and I like Orlando and Norfolk to me are the 2 surprises right now. Orlando has no depth scoring, period. It's Aaron Luchick and Michael Brodzinski and then a bunch of dudes with under 10 points. That's it. And you're just not gonna be a good playoff team. You're not gonna be a playoff team if you have 2 guys carrying the load, and one of them's up in the American Hockey League. So I'm just kind of curious to hear what you think about this South Division.
Well, I think Florida, they had a really rough October. Started 1-2-0-1, and since then are 7-1-2-2. If you're doing your math, that's points in 11 of 12. Florida has become Florida. I mean, they struggled early, and then the guys that they're used to relying on have stepped forward, and they've been able to push through well. I think they're the team that I feel the most confident about in the South Division. As for the other 3, I've swapped back and forth a couple times today trying to figure out who I really think is in there. And I think Orlando, South Carolina, and Greenville are the 3 that make the most sense. With the one that is the biggest struggle for me is that Orlando team because of the lack of depth. I think South Carolina and Greenville, as soon as they can start playing a little consistently, that's going to be when they really start to go on their little hot spurts and reclaim their spots. I think they've both just struggled to be consistent hockey teams. They've just got some figuring out to do on both sides of the puck. They'll be in playoff spots real soon if they can start to clear those over. The dark horse I have, though, is Atlanta, and that's just because of how deep they really are.
Yeah.
I mean, they've got 8 different guys with 6+ points, and 4 of them have double digits. So they've spread it over in an incredible way. They've knocked off teams that they had no business doing and have proven yet again that there's no night off in the ECHL. This is a perfect situation for Atlanta to steal a playoff spot from a team who can't stay consistent.
Yeah, you're right. And I think that, I overlooked Atlanta, to be honest, and probably shouldn't have. So my apologies to Jeff Pyle and the gang in Duluth. But I definitely think that Atlanta can step in there to the 3 or 4 spot and then really just kind of throw everything into chaos like you would normally expect to see South Carolina in there. You and I think maybe I'm speaking for you, but if South Carolina is not in the 16-team field at the end of the regular season, that's going to be a huge, huge story.
Absolutely. I mean, you and I came into the season really thinking that the 4 teams in the South had already started to build their roster in a way that they were going to already kind of separate themselves from the other 3, and that's just not been the case. Mm-hmm. It's another one of the divisions that is just proving that every night you've got to come to battle, or else you're throwing away points. And we saw Florida do that early in the season, and they've really turned their season around. And now we have to see Orlando, South Carolina, and Greenville either prove that they're a playoff team and can play like a playoff team, or we're going to see some of these teams that we don't really expect down there start to rise up the standings.
How big of a shock would it be to you if Norfolk made the playoffs?
I don't think it's a huge shock. I think that this division, like I just had said, kind of sets up for that there isn't a lot of consistency in some of the teams. And Norfolk's another one of those teams that has a really well spread out offense, 9 different guys with 8+ points. If you've got an offense that can spread that thin or that wide, it's going to be hard to beat that hockey team every single night. So this is a South Division that we will not know. And I think I've said this a couple weeks ago. Yeah. The last week of the season is when we'll decide who's the playoffs teams, because there's no teams really that are proving that they're going to be really consistent. It's hard to tell this early in the season, but there's still some lack of consistency there.
Yeah, for sure. And, I think that's what makes this league exciting. We talk about it from a parity perspective that anybody can beat anybody else any given night, and that's great. But I mean, then this year you're ladling in COVID on top of call-ups and injuries, and I think that it just kind of makes that playing field that much more balanced. And I think it's tremendous for the ECHL. You're right. I don't think we're going to know the 4 teams in the South until the night the regular season ends in mid-April. And I don't think we're going to know a whole bunch of these playoff teams until then either. But yeah, I mean, just a good discussion on the South. I think that is the one head scratcher of all the 4 divisions in this league. That is the one that has been the problem child, because you think that, okay, the 4 teams who've made it in consistently, Greenville, Orlando, South Carolina, Florida, will be there. Those are your playoff teams. Book it. Not so much this year. It is a wide open South.
Absolutely. And as the year goes on, we'll dig further into this puzzling South Division and continue to see where it's going. Now moving over to the Western Conference, first the Central Division, where the reigning, defending, not undefeated, but Fort Wayne Comets still lead this division. Toledo right there with them, though, tied at 20 points. Cincinnati and Kalamazoo round out the playoff teams, but just outside looking in is Wheeling, and then a little further down are Indy and Iowa. I know that there is some differences in your and I's opinion, so I'm eager to hear what you think the Central Division might pan out as.
Well, I have my playoff teams in the Central as Toledo, Fort Wayne, Cincinnati, and Wheeling. And Fort Wayne, Toledo, and Cincinnati are the teams who are in the playoff spots at Thanksgiving. Kalamazoo is in a playoff spot at Thanksgiving, and Wheeling, I think Wheeling was tied with them. But I think it's going to ultimately go to Wheeling, that 4th spot. And I think if 2 things happen, I think if Wheeling gets a little bit more offense from players like a Shaw Boomhauer or a Tim Doherty or Matt Alfaro or Sean Jostling, players like that, and they stop taking penalties. This team has over 300 minutes in penalties so far this year, and that leads the team that is second to the Kansas City Mavericks in the Western Conference. So I think if Wheeling can stop taking penalties and shooting themselves in the foot, that this is a team, if they were able to get a little bit more scoring, that can put a charge into Cincinnati even for that third spot. I don't think that it's a team that can get up there and compete with a Fort Wayne or a Toledo quite yet. But give Derek Army time, and he certainly will get the Wheeling Nailers there. I think that this is a playoff team. I just think Kalamazoo's a little too inconsistent on offense right now. They're have players come down and go back up to down and up and up and down between Kalamazoo and Cleveland, and it's hard to get that consistency in the lineup. And some of this core group in Kalamazoo is aging; they're getting fairly old. So I wonder if maybe they just are having a little bit tougher time getting the legs going and things like that. So I just think that ultimately Wheeling is gonna be that team in the Central.
Yeah, I have Toledo, Fort Wayne, and Cincinnati as the three easier ones for me. I think first of all, Toledo is going to continue rolling in this division. They don't really have to worry about this whole send down and call up system everybody else has to, because of the lack of movement with their AHL and NHL affiliates. So they know that they're going to have the consistency player wise. It's just about putting it on the ice. Fort Wayne, I think as long as Vegas and Henderson can both stay healthy, they're going to be in a good place to continue winning. Cincinnati, I think, is just in a unique situation. They've got the lineup to continue competing towards the top of the table. But I'm also struggling with that fourth spot. I have Wheeling penciled in, but I think that the battle between Wheeling and Kalamazoo is going to be one at the AHL level. I think it's the team who is hurt less often by their affiliate. You had mentioned in one of your notes that if these teams stay even, when we hit the AHL playoffs, you're really looking at two different sides of the table. Wilkes-Barre Scranton is starting to trend towards the downside of their division, while Cleveland is definitely trending towards the top part of their division. So you're looking at the potential as if these teams stay even, there might be more help going Wheeling's way than there will be Kalamazoo, and that might be the difference maker towards the end of the season. So that's why I have Wheeling as my fourth team there as well.
If you're looking for a dark horse to win the Central, I will suggest Cincinnati. We all know that that Buffalo's going nowhere fast, right? So we all understand that. Rochester, I think, is in the mix in the American Hockey League in the North Division, in the mix. Let's say Rochester doesn't make the playoffs. You get an all-world or an all-ECHL goaltender in Michael Hauser back in-house, and you get several players back in-house from a really good Rochester team. So that is going to be a very dangerous team to watch down the stretch and into the playoffs. And then, we talk about the trade deadline, and we aren't really sure when the trade deadline is going to be, but we know it's coming and all of that stuff. Like, don't be surprised if Jason Payne's out there making a few moves too, to bolster his hockey club. I really do think that the Central Division title is a 3-team race there with Fort Wayne, Toledo, and Cincinnati.
It is important to note that both Indy and Iowa, who sit at the bottom of the division right now, one of the benefits of it being an 82-game season is there's plenty of time to work your way back towards the top. I think Indy has shown, of the two teams, Indy has shown the most promise. I think they still got a shot if they can string a couple of wins together to start working their way up the table. It's certainly not too early to count out either of those teams. But Indy's the one I'm keeping my eye on, as the one that could potentially do some damage to a Kalamazoo or Wheeling and maybe pop up and steal a fourth spot.
They would need to get some help, significant help from Rockford. And Rockford, as our John Fromey reported earlier today, earlier on Wednesday, is a MASH unit right now. So Rockford's going to need to get healthy and send players down to the Chicago or down to Indianapolis. Is it too late? Like, I mean, I think we're getting to the point with Iowa and Indy that they need to go on a really, really, really long run. And those were the teams I was talking about. Like,
You'd have to.
Yeah. We're getting to that point where, especially when you get to Christmas and then you get into that time between Christmas and the All-Star break, you got to know who you are by that point. And I think most teams, we talked about earlier in the season, developing identities. And I feel like that some teams are, and it's a little bit later for others. You pretty much know who you are by Christmas. And this Indy Fuel team gives up a lot of goals. Iowa the same way, gives up a ton of goals. 4.69 goals per game the Iowa Heartlanders allow. So I feel like we're getting to that point where Iowa and the Heartlanders really need to go on a long, sustained run to get back into the playoff contention. And even then, it may not be enough.
I think if you hit the Christmas break and you're 5+4, maybe even 4+ games under 500, it is an awful place to be in, especially in a division like the Central, where the teams that are at the top are far above at the top. So you've got to win the games within your division if you're Indy and Iowa, because those games mean 4 points every single time. And if you can't go on runs here before Christmas, it makes for a really awful second half of the season. Yeah.
And not fun, but I mean, at least if you're a fan of the Iowa Heartlanders, you get to go to a really nice arena, and Indy has a really nice arena too. But it's knowing that your team's not in a playoff race, having been there before and having covered a team that way, not fun at all. So hopefully they'll get into it here before too long.
Well, now we'll bounce to the Mountain Division, the final one, a division that Utah has buttoned up and put on their tie and sat atop and has no plans of moving. They sit atop the division, Idaho behind them, Wichita in the 3 spot, and Rapid City in the 4 spot. Then Tulsa, Kansas City, Allen round out the outside looking in. What do you see in the Mountain Division, and who do you think are the 4 playoff teams?
Well, I have Utah. I have Idaho as kind of the 2 locks, if you will. You and I both have intimate knowledge of the Wichita Thunder. I wrote it down that I thought Wichita was a playoff team. There, I said it. I think Wichita is a playoff team, and I think Allen will get back into it as well. So the reason why I had Wichita there was because you look at, and we, again, this kind of goes back to the theme of the podcast. Like, what have you gone through to get this team to get to this point? The Thunder had to deal with injuries, and then they've had to deal with the back half of their forward group being mostly from the American Hockey League, and 3 of their 6 defensemen the back half of their forward group plus 3 of their 6 defensemen coming from the SPHL. They've dealt with a whole lot of injuries, and now you're having to deal with Matteo Gennaro and Tim Soderlund going up to Bakersfield of the American Hockey League. And all in the middle of that, there's been a little bit of COVID too. So for this team to go through that drama, if you will, and go through the month of November 8-2-1, 8-2-1, 17 out of a possible 21 points they got in the month of November. Sign me up. And there are pieces coming that will make this team better. So, how do you not look at Wichita and say that this is a playoff team? What's scary about this Thunder team is that they have not received significant help from Bakersfield. Have not. because Bakersfield has been injured and Edmonton has been injured. At
Big
some
time.
point, again, like we talked with South Carolina, that is going to balance out. And those players who are up in the American Hockey League will come back to Wichita, and this roster will get infinitely better. I and I'm and I'm all aboard. I'm all on the Bruce Ramsey bandwagon. Like,
Oh, big time.
I mean, I don't, you know, we saw him earn his Coach of the Year last year because of the record the Thunder had, but I really feel like he's backing it up this year. Um, you know, Newfoundland got out to a great start, and that's great, but they've dealt with their own issues, but I don't think that they've had the team issues that Wichita has had. And you could, all I'm saying is that I think head coach Bruce Ramsey for Wichita is backing up his Coach of the Year from last year. And if this team gets into the playoffs again, I think it'll be a really good season for Wichita. Most fans had them pegged over just get to 500, and it's a good year. I think now if you're a Thunder fan, you have to start thinking about, man, is this a playoff team? I say they are. Going to Allen really quick, I think that Death, Taxes, and Allen Americans hockey in the playoffs kind of go right there. You're not going to give Steve Martinson, Chad Costello, and Jack Combs and nobody else. Like he will make that roster better and has been tinkering with it even when he was at home with COVID, still tinkering with that roster to make it better. And I think that ultimately they will get some more help from the American Hockey League as well, whether it's Charlotte or Chicago or both. And they'll get more help from Seattle as well when the collegiate signing season opens. So I think Allen's going to be right there as well.
I'm very close in agreement with you. I also have Utah and Idaho as the two teams who I think have really cemented their place. Utah, I think it's their division to lose now. I think Ryan Kanasowicz has done a great job using the existing building blocks that were already there. And the help he's getting from Colorado, both the NHL and AHL. We had him on the show a couple weeks ago, and he just loves the communication that they have between the three. He says there's not a day that goes by he doesn't have communication. And it's led to a great start. So Utah is the team I'm the most impressed with. The one where I differ with you is instead of Wichita, I have Tulsa as my third or fourth, whichever we want to say, playoff team. Ooh. And I don't think this Tulsa team has had enough talk about them. Splits a two-game series with Rapid to start the year, then brings Idaho in and wins 2 of 3. Then they win both games against Kansas City in a home-and-home split. They lose a couple to Wichita, and that's kind of where they've had the majority of their losses, and then had an impressive outing against Utah. I don't think there's been enough talk about them, and I think that Daniel Manila has been incredible. Played in 10 games, 6-2-0-0, or 6-2-0-1, I'm sorry, between the pipes, a 211 goals against average, a 927 save percentage. When you've got a guy like that behind you, it's easy to play well in front of him. And I think Tulsa's in a really good place right now that if they can stay consistent, they're going to be challenging for that that other playoff spot in my eyes.
Yeah.
Daniel,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Daniel Manella is banged up right now. He left Sunday's game He left Sunday's game with an injury, I believe. A little banged up right now. And then they had Mason McDonald on that roster. He retired. So it's a bit of a goaltender by committee right now for Tulsa. And I mean, I guess the good news is if you're an Oilers fan, they play Thursday, then they don't play again until Sunday. So they're going to get a little bit of time in between these games to figure out what their goaltending situation looks like. They're getting Adam Pleskash back in the lineup. He had missed the first 10 to 12 games of the year due to an injury. So I think that Tulsa will be there. They have the pieces in this lineup to put together some solid offense. I like Alex Gilmore's game. He's a solid rookie, leads the Oilers with 9 points on the year. Dylan Sadaways have been a very good veteran addition to that hockey club. And then they're just rock solid on the back end as well. So This is your typical Rob Murray team, solid on the back end, solid in net, and a few big pieces up front. The thing that continues to bother me about Tulsa is their goal scoring. They have 36 goals in 13 games. That's not a lot of goals. So in the same vein as Jacksonville, when the goaltending has to carry the team, at some point that house of cards will fall. And I think that we saw it fall a little bit on Sunday afternoon, and it's going to be up to Kai Edmonds and a netminder to be named later for Tulsa to be the stopgap, if you will, until Daniel Manella gets back from injury. So interesting there. I think if you look at how Wichita matches up now against Rapid City, Tulsa, and Kansas City, we take Allen out because you and I both, I think, agree that Allen will be in the playoffs, right?
Yeah, I have faith in Allen. My only thing is it will take more than Costello, Combs, and Asachuk.
Yeah.
And Steve Martinson is going to add to this team, along with the help from Seattle. But you've got to have more than those three guys in order for them to be in there. But I do have them as I have them slotting in as the fourth team, not necessarily in the fourth spot.
Right. So I think if you take Allen out and you look at Rapid City, Tulsa, Kansas City, Wichita, who's the best of the four teams right now? Has to be Wichita, right?
Yeah.
Wichita has a winning record against Rapid City, has a winning record against Tulsa, and I believe has a winning record against Kansas City when they start play this week. And Kansas City, Wichita hook up for a 5-game set spanning 2021 into 2022. So Kansas City, Wichita against Kansas City so far this year is 1-1, I believe. So I think right now Wichita is the best of those teams, which is what you and I thought all along. Who's going to be the better of the bottom four teams of Kansas City, Wichita, Tulsa, and Rapid? And I think it right now is Wichita.
Add this to the list of decision we find out the last week of the season.
Quite possibly.
Because these four teams all have the movement with their affiliates that just kind of spur of the moment come out of nowhere. So to see how these teams rotate through that is going to be interesting. Another one of those teams that we just haven't mentioned a lot of is that Rapid City team who can kind of come out of nowhere and maybe snag a spot as well. So we'll keep an eye on the Mountain Division, which seems to be another one of those divisions that has a huge battle at play for that fourth spot. Logan
Nelson's the MVP of that Rapid City Rush team right now. And by the way, I saw them in action Wednesday night when they played Wichita, and that is when Rapid City's on their game, really, really on their game, that is a very, very tough team to play against. They shut Wichita down in that contest, took away all of their time and space, got sticks in lanes, just made life hell on the Thunder. And that is when Rapid City plays like that, Scott Burt brand of hockey, that is a nasty team to play against.
And come to mention that they are also exceptional on special teams. 25.4% on the power play is good for third in the league, and the penalty kill is not far behind at 83.3%, good for ninth in the ECHL. When you've got successful special teams and you can travel the way that Rapid City does, far ways, and string wins together, man, you're that thorn in those teams' sides. Just another one of those wild card teams out there.
Very much like in Atlanta in the South. Could come in and create all kinds of havoc if they get in.
Well, we've given you our thoughts, and come April, I'm sure that many of our picks will be wrong, because that's what makes us journalists, is that we're destined to be wrong sometime when we try to guess the future.
That's right.
But we'll keep you updated with where things look like in the standings and the parity we're starting to see right now throughout the ECHL. We'll switch over to the third period here and quickly look at our picks to click now for this upcoming week of hockey. First, we'll drop back to 2 weeks ago's show and our picks for that one. On the Friday night, we had Newfoundland and Reading. We both took Newfoundland in that game and both won that one. Then on Saturday, Rapid City traveled to Allen. We both took Rapid. Rapid got it done. Maine and Orlando also faced that Saturday. We both took Maine. It was Orlando who came out on top, giving us both L's. And then Kansas City, Utah met up later in the weekend. Utah wins that one. We both picked Utah. Fort Wayne, Iowa. That was the shock of the week. Of those 5, we both took Fort Wayne, and Iowa came up and took that one. So we tied 3-2 because we had the exact same picks. Takes us to 12-7-1 for myself, 11-8-1 for you. And much like the divisions in the ECHL, it's neck and neck.
Yeah, we're both going to make the playoffs, I feel like. So, it's been neck and neck, and we've got another good slate of games here to pick this week.
Yeah, so game 1 is Cincinnati-Wheeling. I'll say this before I say any of my picks. Every single one you picked, I am struggling with. So congratulations.
Yeah, me too. So don't feel bad. You look here at Cincinnati, and the reason why I picked this was kind of to go back to 2 weeks ago, right, when we had the shenanigans between Cincinnati and Wheeling at the end of the first period. Now, I don't think we're going to see anything like that again this time. I think we're dealing with quite a little bit of a different scenario here between these two clubs. Cincinnati comes into the game, into the contest this weekend, sitting third in the Central Division, 6-4 in their last 10 games, 9-6-0 overall, 50 goals scored in 15 games, and 41 goals allowed. Very similar matched team in Wheeling, 6-4 in their last 10 as well. They have an 8-6 record so far on the season. I really like what Wheeling has done. Like I said, the medal of Wheeling to come into Intrust Bank Arena and then be down 4 goals after a first period, and then have to weather a 94-minute ice stoppage and then come back and win that game says a lot about this team. I don't like the fact that Patrick Watling is up in the American Hockey League. So that said, I will take Cincinnati in this contest.
Of course you do. Well, I'll just come out and say it. I have Cincinnati in this game as well. And that's just purely that they're not allowing goals on the power play.
Right.
First of all, they're not giving up many power plays, only 58 times shorthanded, but only 7 goals against, good for an 87.9% mark. Cincinnati has been exceptional throughout the year on their penalty kill. Not only are they shutting down opponents' offenses, but they're limiting shots. I mean, these teams are almost having to play dump and chase on their own power plays. I've gone back and watched a couple, and it is a lockdown defense that this Cincinnati team has, and I think that's going to be the key difference, especially against a Wheeling team who is kind of mid-pack in the power play at 20.4%, good for 9th in the ECHL. I think the winner of this game is going to be the winner on special teams, and I think it's Cincinnati.
To your point about Cincinnati playing lockdown defense, only Jacksonville allows fewer shots. But Jacksonville's played 2 more games than Cincinnati. 25.8 allowed per game from Cincinnati. They shut it down.
That does not suck.
No. Jason Payne's put together a pretty good defense there.
Rapid City Tulsa provides a pretty interesting matchup. What do you see there?
Well, I think it's a matter of who outgrits the other in this contest. We talked about it just a minute ago that there are going to be a pair of SPHL goaltenders in net for the Tulsa Oilers. Ryan Ruck was signed to an ECHL contract earlier on Wednesday, and then Kai Edmonds came to the Oilers yesterday from SPHL Evansville. I think that this is going to be a game where if you're Rapid City, you're kind of licking your chops a little bit, like, oh man, I can't wait to get going here and put some offense together. This Rapid City team can really put some offense on a club. I'm not sure Tulsa has the offense to play with them. They're only scoring 2.77 goals per game so far this season. I will take Rapid City in this contest simply because of the goaltending situation with the Oilers right now.
I wanted to lean Tulsa's way in this one, but if you have Manila net, it's a totally different story.
Oh, yeah.
I think the net minding difference is what makes the difference in this game. I like Rapid City purely because of that, and you conveniently stole the words out of my mouth. It sets up for a unique opportunity for Rapid City. Once again, a team we're not talking enough about, and this is a great opportunity for them to prove themselves on a little bigger stage.
Yeah, absolutely.
The next one that you throw on there is Atlanta and Norfolk, two teams that we talked about just a little bit ago, surprising some folks. What do you see there?
And to your point about Atlanta, the gritty Atlanta Gladiators, Hugo Roy has been the goal scorer for the Atlanta Gladiators so far this year. 8 goals in 10 games. He's kind of the offensive spark plug for that team. Cody Sylvester as well, and Derek Nesbitt tied for the team lead in points. On the other side, you look at Norfolk, who have put together some solid offense so far this year. Chase Lane, Carl Elamir, Noah Corson, and Alex Tong, each with over 10 points. Daniel Brickley's up in the American Hockey League with Chicago right now. Goaltending wise, man, I think you have to give the edge to the Atlanta Gladiators. And so in this contest, I will take Jeff Piles, Atlanta Gladiators.
Well, finally, we have a little differentiating opinions. Norfolk and Orlando faced off for a 4-game set last week. In the 4-game set, Orlando won 3 of the 4 games, but the one that Norfolk won, a 6-1 offensive explosion on Sunday afternoon. I think there's enough chip on your shoulder after a hard-fought 4-game set with Orlando that Norfolk enters this game playing a little bit better hockey, and I like Norfolk going through this one. The two teams are facing off Wednesday night. The game is not concluded as of the time that you and I are recording, but these teams are evenly matched and are going to be fighting for potentially the 4th spot or maybe even 3rd spot, depending on how things fall out, of a playoff seeding. And I like the trend that Norfolk is on right now. I think the good teams in this league are going to be the ones who bounce back after rough little stretches, and this is a great opportunity for Norfolk to do that as these two teams face 3 times throughout this week, and I like Norfolk in this one.
I can see your other side of that. I just think for Norfolk, it's either feast or famine. Like they either score a bushel full of goals or they score no goals at all, and that's why I just lean a little bit more consistently to the offensive side in Atlanta.
And boy, does Atlanta just come out there and nip at your heels all game long.
Yeah.
They're the annoying chihuahua that you're not losing anytime soon.
Yeah.
A unique opportunity this weekend for Kansas City to start righting their ship as they face Idaho. What are your thoughts going into this one?
By the way, you and I didn't get a chance to talk about this in our first period. What is wrong with Kansas City these days? I struggle to find it. You would think on paper that this is a really good team that Tato has assembled. There you have Nick Pastjov, Marcus Crawford, Lane Scheidel, Derek Angeli, who all played together last year. Weston Michaud is up in the American Hockey League. Ryan Harrison's there as well. Jesse Mitchin comes in after just lighting it up in Allen a year ago before he got hurt. Can you help figure this out? Like they're not playing a whole lot of defense, I think. And I think the numbers bear this out. They allow 55 goals in 16 contests. They're hot and cold too, but they've no wins in their last 5. I'm a little bit befuddled as to what's going on up there in Ohadland.
Yeah, you and I had really high hopes for this team coming into the season. it doesn't really make sense. They have the puzzle pieces to be a good team. Contrary to what their goals against looks like, they're a very good team on the penalty kill as well. But they're just not getting it done on 5-on-5 hockey. And if that continues, they're going to continue to struggle. This is a game that I could see as one of those, we call them in sports, the infamous trap games. I think this is an Idaho team that's smart enough to not overlook a Kansas City, but they've got to be careful. This is a Kansas City team looking for answers and looking to right their ship. I have Idaho winning the game, but this is the couple of games like you and I mentioned in the middle segment with Indy and Iowa. This is the time for Kansas City to maybe go on a little bit of a run and get themselves close or even at 500 as we go through the next couple of weeks, or else it's going to be a very tough second half.
I would agree with you. I'd take Idaho in this contest, but don't be surprised if Kansas City pulls the upset here.
Yeah. Well, our weekend concludes with a clash in the north between Adirondack and Maine.
Adirondack is a team similar to Kansas City looking to right the ship so far this season. Another veteran-laden team that has gotten off to a bit of a slow start. Pete MacArthur with 13 points in 15 games. Tyler Irvine, a solid rookie, 15 points in 15 games. Patrick Grasso, 14 points in 13 games. When you look at this Adirondack lineup, you can tell that all of the pieces are there for them to have success, just not doing it right now. And the biggest thing that I come to is, a team that like Adirondack, who, and like most teams in the ECHL, they love playing from ahead. Adirondack, when they are down after 2 periods, are 0-8. So if you have a chance to get Adirondack down, you keep them down. They only have 1 win when they're tied or trailing in either the first or second period. So this is a team, like I said, likes to play from ahead. I think if Maine is able to jump on them early, that Maine will win. And I have Maine.
I have Maine, and that is because the power play up there is exceptional.
Mm-hmm.
Teams have been pretty good about not taking penalties against this team, which is the right thing to do. Through 14 games, they have 40 opportunities on the power play, and they've scored on 14 of them. That's a whopping 35%.
Jeez.
You can't give them the opportunities, or else they're going to make you pay. And that's going to be the difference in this game, because Adirondack has struggled early in this year on the penalty kill. They are second worst in the league at 71.9%. This is another one of those games that will be won on the special teams. If Adirondack can't stay out of the box, they're going to be playing from behind for a lot of that game.
Yes, absolutely. And like I said, if you're Adirondack, you need to get out early and you need to hold the lead and stay out of the box. Otherwise, it's good night, Jim Kite.
Well, here we sit just a couple weeks away from the Christmas break, an extra 1 or 2 weeks away from the All-Star break. And like I mentioned every time, before we know it, we're going to be sitting there at the beginning of April filling out our playoff brackets, if you will. So the season's moving along very quickly. Finally, we're starting to see a couple of teams take shape, become themselves, find their identity. And, of course, in the next couple of weeks, we'll get to see that further. We broke down a couple of the teams who really need to make something happen quick, or else the season could go by the wayside. But I think that just about does it for another episode here.
Yeah, no doubt. It's good to talk hockey with you, and it's good to be back here and doing the podcast as we kind of steamroll toward the end of the year and continue to count down toward Jacksonville here, T-minus 7 weeks.
They'll be here before we know it, and it should be a fun ride there.
Let's hope we get there.
Yeah, let's hope we get there. Well, for Matthew Harding, I'm Matthew Will. Thanks for joining us on another edition of the 3 Periods podcast, where we sit down and break down what's happening in the ECHL. Go find yourself a hockey game this weekend. Take a picture from your seat and let us know where you're watching, and also let us know your picks to click for this week. You can hit us up, as you can see on the bottom below us right now, at 3 Periods Pod on Twitter. And then there are our 2 @ on Twitter. You can let us know what you think of the weekend of ECHL games. Let us know where you're watching games and who you're picking to win them. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
You've been listening to the 3 Periods Podcast. Do you have a topic you'd like discussed? Hit us up on Twitter at 3 Periods Pod with the hashtag TPP on FPH. And for the latest news on the ECHL and minor league hockey, visit fieldpasshockey.com.
They're going home. I'm a man. I'm 40.